Okay, Margaret, and Sasha making this video to kind of show you what's happening with the cottage here. There was a porch outside, and this will be just a little bit choppy, but I don't know if you remember, there was a porch that was hanging off the balcony here. It was supported by two I-beams, one that came out the end there, and one that came out here. If you go inside, you could see this is the laminated beam that went out. And what happened was the rot actually had gone through the beam and farther back into the cottage than we hoped it would. This particular beam is very structural. As you can see, I've supported it as sort of a backup here because I was really concerned about the integrity of this end. This end is fine, but it supports these beams, which is not really too big a deal. But what happens is this end sits on this beam, okay, and there's a load that comes down from that beam. I don't know if you can see, I'm going to come around here. This beam here basically goes all the way down, and it sits just probably about 10 inches inside. And this beam is supporting these horizontal laminated beams that run all the way there. It also, the weight of that beam is this laminated beam, which runs a full span here, is also transmitted down through here, and this sits again on that post that's down, you know, the end of it's right about out here. So this beam sits on top of it down there in the kitchen. And there's another one here that has a vertical post that also rests on that horizontal beam in the kitchen. So it's very structural. It carries a lot of weight, and we have to get it repaired. So I'll go outside and kind of show you. What's happened. The good news is there is a wall in the laundry room downstairs that runs right through here. It's actually lined up with this beam, and the wall sort of runs right here. So this is sort of sitting on a wall, which is good news for, I don't know if we're going to have quite enough strength here to lift this beam. We're going to put a metal kind of U-shaped channel on it that comes out here that makes up for the rottenness that lies right beyond this. Probably need to trim back the soffits a little bit, and I don't know if you can see the kind of cracking here, but what's happened is this beam is actually lifted a little bit on this end and kind of probably pulled the soffits and these beams up. These guys, the cabinets are stuck to the wall, so you can see the gap that's kind of opened up. So that end has definitely settled some. You can also see the creasing in the drywall there where it's kind of crunched it down a bit. So coming out here, sorry I wasn't quite set up for this, so you can kind of see the rot, and basically that's the laminated beam. The rot has gone well into the cottage, so I want to make sure that's fixed. It's also, it appears water was channeled back here, so a lot of this plywood is damaged. And also the vertical beam that this laminated beam sits on, which goes down this wall, we don't know quite what's going on with that yet, but if you look down here, I could stick a screwdriver down there, so there's definitely significant damage to that, so we're going to have to pull that out too. And you know, the question is, how much siding do we take away? I'm not quite sure on that. This other end, you know, the beam was rotten too. What happened was Phil ended up stepping on that deck this summer, and then the whole deck settled about 3 inches. So that's when he first became aware that there was a problem with these beams, especially at this end. I knew there was something fishy going on at the other end, but I actually thought it was just external to the cottage. And the problem is the way the water kind of runs off the roof there. but I didn't realize there's so much of a problem at this end. And Phil didn't really see it either. So what's happened here is we kind of dug into this. So that beam is basically rotted back in there as well. It's not really as structural. You know, we certainly need to shore it up because it kind of supports this end of this vertical end of the cottage. But, you know, it doesn't carry the load that other one does. But one thing this area demonstrates is the beam, which you can see the rot kind of going back into here, was sitting on a post that was right here. I'm going to show you that post, but we peeled all this away and the water is still, this post is still damaged, going all the way down here. So we need to kind of open up the side of the cottage, and depending on what we do with the cement, the hardy backer, depends on how careful we want to be with the cosmetic kind of treatment of the cedar, this external cedar. I'll talk to you more in person a little bit about some of those issues. But I'll show you the post that we recovered from that corner. And here it is. You can see it's really pretty much of a mess. The water just ran down into this thing. This looks like wet rot from everything I've heard, and that's actually good news in terms of it gets wet, it damages the beam. I would like to have someone look at it to see if it could be dry rot, which is actually more serious because dry rot apparently, you know, it gets caused by wet rot and started, and then it's a fungus that ends up getting into wood. Once it's in there, it keeps seeking new wood and it dries it out. So you have to spray it with like a boric acid or something to kind of kill it. Whereas wet rot, really, you know, it's water related, and the appearance of this is kind of a chalky white, which indicates more wet rot. But I wouldn't mind someone who knows wood really well having a look at it. And you can see this plywood, that's sort of the sheathing of the cottage, is really damaged, and we want to make sure we replace that and also replace the tie back. That's that kind of, it's a sort of a nylon sheet that goes over the plywood that protects it from getting moist. In this case, what it was doing was sort of insulating, so the water couldn't get out of here, so it was working against us. But the plywood that's all back in here is really just rotten. You can just pull it out with your fingers and crumble it. So, you know, repair is more extensive than we were hoping. Phil took out that board, and we were kind of hoping that would be the end of it, but I think we need a little deeper dive here. Anyway, so I'll talk to you more about it in person though. Signing off.